Welcome, everyone. We're so pleased to have you here and chiming in. And Cynthia is going to get us started in a few minutes, but thanks for joining us this afternoon.
If you want to use the chat to just say hello and let me know if you're a teacher, what you teach, or if you're a program director, where you do that work, and anything about yourself, that would be great. Fairfax County is in the house. That's where I grew up, by the way. Fairfax County Public Schools.
If you're just coming in, welcome. And we'll get started in a few minutes. But if you want to put who you are in the chat and say hello, that's awesome. We're super excited to have Cynthia Peters here from Word Education, ready to tell us all about the change agent.
Great. So why don't do you want to kick us off, Hillary, or should I?
I will just briefly say that we really appreciate you, Cynthia, bringing your wealth of experience as an adult educator and as the longtime editor of The Change Agent to come here for us and tell us more about it. And I'll let you get right to the good stuff.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. I just want to encourage you, Hillary, and Kate, if you see anything in the chat, I'll be trying track that myself, but if you see anything in the chat where, I just feel free to interrupt me. And I want to just welcome everybody here and just let you know this is going to be very interactive. I'm going to have you be doing things on the website and making copies of things and downloading them, and also just asking for your input a lot of different times. So please feel free to unmute whenever you want and interrupt me and just ask a question or put a question in the chat, and Hillary and Kate can interrupt me. So I really do hope to hear from you during the course of this webinar. I'm going to share my screen and just take you through some slides here to get us started. Our agenda looks like this: a little introductory information, some information about how to log into the Change Agent website. I'm going to touch on the college and career readiness standards for reading and writing, just so we can kind of have those in our minds as we go through the content. I want to chat about the role of thematic unity but in diverse writings. We're going to then dig down a little bit into the mental health issue, which came out a year or two ago. And we're going to look at 3 pieces in a little bit of detail. I want to show you a graphic organizer that you can use for students to take notes and then generate from that their own piece of writing. If we have time, I really hope you get to meet Carlos. He's an amazing GED student who wrote for the Career Pathways issue of the Change Agent. And also there's a beautiful digital story by him, which I think is great to share with GED students. So I hope to be able to show you that. So I want to just introduce the Change Agent before we get started. I know many of you might have heard of it or know a little bit about it, but let me just get everybody on the same page. So it is an online magazine by and for adult learners. So we really see our goal is to promote student voice, to choose topics that are relevant to adult learners, and then let adult learners be the ones who talk about it, right? So we send out a call for articles. Teachers support their students to write articles and submit those to the Change Agent. An editorial board looks them over. We pull it together into content. We publish 3 issues a year. We don't print them anymore because pandemic. It's all online now. And the articles are multi-level. And they do feature students as agents of change. And I mean that really broadly. Sometimes the student might be telling a story of how they made a small change in their own life, or in the way that they took on learning, for example. Or it might zoom out a little bit and be more about family or community or workplace. So that's the idea. That's the idea behind our title, The Change Agent. We are now available in 3 formats. So not every article is available in all these formats, but more and more we're playing with the online formats. So of course there's PDFs of every article. So you can print out a nice tidy page. You can email that PDF to your students. You can print it out and hand it to them, mail it to them, look at it online, whatever you want. There are audio versions of our articles. And there are now Google Slide versions of our articles. This particular article that I picked here is called "My Mom is a Brave Woman." It's from issue 56. If you want to go look at that, once you're logged into the Change Agent, you can go back and look at that. We're not going to dive into that article here, but if you're curious about it, highly recommend it, and you can go check it out. So now let's do something hands-on. I would like everybody to just go ahead and log in. So the way we're going to do this is Hillary's going to put that hot link to the Change Agent top page in the chat, as well as the username and password. And I would like everybody to go to the Change Agent website. In the upper right-hand corner, you'll see a spot for username and password. Keep in mind, these are case-sensitive usernames and passwords. So you have to have the VALRC be all caps and the password also in all caps. And a big shout out to VALRC for buying this bulk subscription for all of its members, and of course, all of the students who are enrolled in programs that you serve. So you can share this information widely with all of your fellow teachers, all of your students. When I'm teaching, I have my students save this information on their phone so that they can access the audio and all the resources themselves, and on their own time, go explore. So please feel free to share this widely with people who are VALRC members. So take your time now to log in. And then if you don't mind, just come back to the chat and just give me a thumbs up, or let me know, just say I'm in. Let me know you made it in. I'm hoping to have you spend a little time playing around on the website. So I really would like it if everybody could log in. So Kate says she's in. Sandra Turner is in. Great. I'm seeing some thumbs up. Great. Lots of I'm ins. Perfect. 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 Yeah. Keep it saved, on your laptop. Mine, I never have to remember what my username and password is anymore. It's just there and I just click it. Great. Wonderful. Is anybody having difficulty in and viewing, says Joyce? Just go right for it, Joyce. Good job. I don't want to lose you all now, but I have a feeling. Okay, so actually this might be a good time to for me to show you. This is what a little task I want you to do. I want you to go to the change agent top page, which a lot of you are already there, and I'm showing it to you here on my screen. But I'd like for you to go to the issues tab. You can see it here. And if you're logged in, you'll be able to click on any of these issues and look around a little bit. So before you click on an issue though, just scroll down to just get a sense of the themes that the change agent has covered over the years. So, and actually what I want you to do is after you scroll around, I want you to come back and tell me which one of these kind of caught your attention, because I'd love to just see where your interest gets grabbed. Hillary, thanks for tracking Tammy. Hopefully she'll be able to get in. All right, let me stop sharing for a second and just ask you if you've had a chance to scroll through the issues tab and get a sense of the different topics that we cover. And you'll find some of them are kind of strange. We even have a whole issue on hair. We have more normal topics like career pathways. But what we're doing at our end is we're kind of like, what are adult learners thinking about? What do adult learners care about? What's going to capture their attention? What's going to make them want to write for the magazine? And what's going to make them want to read the magazine? So that's what we're doing at our end. And I'd like to just see, where you all fall. So Kate noticed women in literacy from 2004. Yeah. And Krista noticed the celebrations issue. Could you unmute Krista and just say, what about that? Like, why does that look interesting to you? And
honestly, hi. Mostly because that is one of my favorite things about having multi-level classes, is learning about the different cultures and the different celebrations and learning from each other. So it's just one of the things I like.
Great. I mean, since you mentioned that one, I'd like to just say that one thing that's kind of noticeable about the change agent is it really doesn't go out of date. So the celebrations issue was published, I don't know how many years ago. More than 5 years ago, I think. I don't know, but
2015.
Anyway, what, 2015?
Yeah.
Okay, I lose time. It's just all. But there's articles in there about Christmas, about Labor Day, about Juneteenth, about, I can't remember, Thanksgiving. There's article in there called Mexican Thanksgiving. So it's adult learners talking about their holidays, and so you can look at that issue for any time of the school year and probably find a relevant holiday, right? And have it be a jumping off point for your class to discuss their holidays. So thank you for mentioning that one. Does anybody else want to mention one? Joyce is mentioning Stand Up and Be Counted and finding our voices. Why did that grab you, Joyce?
I guess it goes to what you said earlier about this is a voice from the students, and no one can tell your testimony like you can. and have the opportunity to inspire others. That's one thing that I find that I'm very passionate about, is that we know what we can see and feel all the differences, but when someone can get the strength and courage to be able to be a part of a movement or whatever you want to call it, or just an article to say that I accomplished this or I believe this, and be a voice that can be reckoned with, that excites me.
Thank you. Thank you. And I think it helps hold up a mirror to adult learners. So that when you have adult learners telling a story about how they took charge of something, I think the reader is going to be able to see themselves in that and go, oh, I've done that kind of thing too, but I never thought of myself that way. And so it holds up a mirror and just shines a light on the ways that learners are already, using their voices and advocating for themselves and doing things like that. Thank you, Joyce. Anybody else want to say something that they noticed? Rebecca noticed the good jobs, not just any jobs. What did you notice about that, Rebecca?
I actually picked 3 issues that really stuck out to me, because one was also about healthcare. And then there was another one, doing our jobs and taking care of our children. Anybody who knows me and has been in any webinar with us for adult education, they know that I am a huge advocate for living wages, benefits for everyone, all of that. And I'm always telling our students how they can advocate for themselves. When I go over interviewing skills and we talk about red flags, I also tell them what red flags to look for from the employer, and what are good questions. Yeah, what are good questions for them to ask? Because, I want them to have good jobs.
Right.
So it's just nice to see those issues. I'm looking forward to diving into them even more to see what other adults have done to advocate for themselves. It can't just be me doing it and saying this is what they need. It's got to come from our students and them saying this is what we need.
Yes, and that's exactly what you're going to find in the change agent over and over and over again. It's student voices, students themselves talking about how they did it, nobody preaching at them, and it's very organic. And it's, I don't know, you'll see there's lovely content in here. Let me go back to sharing my screen and go back to the slideshow and keep us moving. But thank you all for just sharing your thoughts there. I feel like it kind of opened a window into the change agent content so you can see what we've got. So I thought I would include these learning objectives just to be accountable, to you all and to myself, that, this is what I'm hoping you come out of this webinar with. You're going to be able to access the change agent and navigate around the website to a certain degree. You'll be able to make copies of Google Docs and Google Slides so that you can adapt the materials for your own use. Okay, so I'm really trying to make stuff as teacher friendly as possible. So when I create something, I want you to be able to copy it, download it, adapt it, use it for your students, and make changes to it as you need to. And then help students. I'm going to share one of the pieces I'm going to share as a graphic organizer. So I want you by the end of this to be able to help students move from collecting information in a graphic organizer to using those notes as the basis for a writing project or presentation. Okay, so let's just move into some nitty-gritty stuff about standards. These are sort of my adaptations of the college and career readiness standards for reading and writing. I just put them in what I think of as maybe plainer English. So, and I grouped them together. So I think normally there's 10 standards for reading, but I grouped them loosely together into 4 categories. So the first one is just being able to identify what the text says and what it doesn't say, ask and answer questions about it, describe the main idea, and be able to say why you think it's the main idea. So one thing about the standards is we're trying to train students to go back to the text and share evidence for why they think something is true. It's not okay just to be able to say, oh, I think it's this. As a teacher, you want to say, why do you think it's that? Show me where in the text you get that idea. The second category, explain how the author organizes text and how they use language to communicate, be able to say who wrote this and how and why that matters. Assess how this text connects with other sources. Does it measure up? Is it valid? Explain. So being able to use sources, being able to compare texts, be able to read widely and deeply from a broad range of high quality texts. Again, the change agent is going to give you that option because in one issue, there will be several articles on similar themes. So you can draw from them. Some of them might be higher level, some of them might be lower level. You know, there'll be a broad range. And so that's a great way to connect with that standard. For writing, you know, write arguments, informational and explanatory texts and narratives, stress complexity, reasoning, evidence, and details. And you can do this at any level. Whether your students are more in the intermediate range or the higher level, they're almost ready to take their GED. The change agent gives you this opportunity at all different levels. Be clear, grammatical, and organized, know your audience, speak clearly to them, plan, revise, use technology and the internet to produce and publish writing and to collaborate and interact. Research, use various print and digital sources, assess credibility of those sources, do not plagiarize, very hard to do. And when when you can go and look at them, something, cut and paste something, throw it in there. I get a lot of submissions that have a lot of plagiarism. I mean, I don't think anyone's doing it on purpose. They just haven't learned about that you can't just grab something from Wikipedia and throw it into an article, you know. So coaching your students on that is super important, very standards aligned, very important for college and career readiness. Write routinely over extended timeframes and shorter timeframes for a range of tasks, purposes, and audience. So all different kinds of writing you want your students to be doing, not just one kind, not just a 5-paragraph essay, but even lists, emails, notes. You know, you want your students to be able to write in all kinds of ways. So I'm just quickly touching on these because you'll notice as we go through that the things we're doing, the activities we're doing are very aligned to these standards. In addition, they're really engaging, they're relevant, they're socially relevant, you know, they're checking a lot of boxes. Okay, and for each issue of the change agent, I do a grid where I point you to which articles and activities address which standards. So again, trying to be thoughtful about teachers, make it easy on teachers. So if you as a teacher feel like, wow, you know, I'm really not addressing X, Y, or Z standard, what can the change agent help me with here? You can go to one of these grids and see where the activities address those standards. You'll be getting a copy of these slides. So these little hot links that you see here, you'll be able to just click on them and go straight to the part of the website that shows you where I have those grids. Okay, if I'm going too fast or if anybody has any questions, again, please interrupt. Please put it in the chat or just unmute and talk to me. So I'm going to do a generative activity here, and I'm going to stop sharing and ask, while I'm not sharing, Hillary will maybe take some notes here. So now you've kind of learned that the change agent, each issue is theme based. So everybody writing in that issue is addressing a certain theme. It might be health, it might be career pathways, it might be hair, it might be race, it might be indigenous peoples. What do you think, what are the advantages? Oh, and it's also multi-level. So what are the advantages in your mind of having your students dive into a theme? How could that work in your classroom? How could that be meaningful for your students?
It creates a focus for the student.
Okay. And what is, yeah, go ahead, say more.
Well, I was saying that with the focus, so many times they feel like they might not have something to write about, but if you can do some type of activity where they could discuss a broad range of topics and then you narrow it down to one, you can show them how it can come from being large to coming smaller to individual. And if you do that way, as long as it's a theme that they could participate in selecting.
Mm-hmm. I love that. Yeah. You can zoom in on a micro part of that theme, or you can zoom out. Yes, it's great. I also see in the chat that Krista says it's relevant to them and will keep them more interested in the material. Right. So then that acts as a scaffolding to harder material. Like if you found something that they're interested in, the scaffolding into more complex text is their interest. Oh, I want to know what this person says about this topic. You know, that's what's going to drive me to challenge myself to take on a harder text. Patricia says it makes it easier to connect topics and skills, develops personal connections to material. Yes, there's just more ways into the material when you have more content. And Catherine says, that's what I was going to say. Kate says, great way to learn about a range of perspectives on a single theme. Yes, and then be able to think critically about those range of perspectives, evaluate those perspectives, think about who the writer is and why they might have that perspective. Also, you get immersed in a set of concepts and vocabulary, right? You're reusing the same vocabulary, using it in different contexts, really learning words, concepts, phrases related to that theme. So it's going to build a sense of mastery, which is a great persistence driver, right? When people are feeling like, yeah, I'm really getting some feeling of mastery on this topic. Okay. Great. Any other thoughts there? Thematic unity. I just want to say one thing about the different levels. You know, if there's no such thing as an ABE classroom that isn't multi-level, right? I mean, we wish that was kind of all the same level, but that's just never the case, you know? So you could have somebody reading, you could have everybody in the class like reading at slightly different levels, but participating in a discussion on the same theme. So it's helpful for the multi-level classroom to have these theme-based issues. One thing I would like to show you about the website is that we do level the material. So we have this one spot where if you go to resources, let me make this screen a little bigger here. If you go to resources and you go down to, it's the third entry under resources, there's this index with article reading levels and audio. So this is an index of all the change agent articles, and you can sort them by level, right? So if you have people who are more at the beginning, if you're mostly, well, if you're ABE, but if you're, for your GED students, you can find the harder level stuff. If you have people at a lower literacy level, you can find more of the beginner stuff. You can find all the pieces that have the audio. So this is a way into the change agent content is by level. If you're going into it by issue, you can also just go to say, for example, this one, you can go down to the table of contents and sort this also by level. So you can get one issue and sort it by level, or you can get all of our content and sort that by level. So that's just a good thing to know about the change agent. Any questions about that?
Yeah, we have a question. Could you repeat where you find the reading levels?
Sure. So they're in two places. One is in the issues tab. When you open an issue, the table of contents for just that issue has the levels. And you can sort it by level or by page number. I don't put the levels on the PDF because I'm not trying to make a big deal about levels. I really want interest to guide people. But I also do believe that it matters to kind of be realistic about what level you're at. And so the levels are here for you to play with. So that's one way in. The other way in is via resources. And you go down to the third blue heading. And this is a huge index of change agent articles going back, maybe 15 years. And this is also sortable by level. And so you get many more at the level that you want. So if you just look at one issue, you might only find a handful that are right for a certain level. But if you go at it this way, you'll find, dozens and dozens at the level that you're looking for. All right. I hope everybody should have my email address, because if any questions come up or you're like, oh, you said that thing and you showed us, but I forget, you just email me and ask me. I'd be happy to answer any questions. All right, so thank you. Wow. Hillary, look at all this here on this slide. So again, you will get a copy of these slides, so you'll be able to revisit these notes and see these ideas written down. So thanks everybody for sharing your ideas. So now what I want to do is look a little bit deeply into the mental health issue, especially 3 articles. Well, first of all, 1 article and then maybe 3 articles. My idea about how this works is like this mental health issue. It's a little bit like an accordion, right? I mean, it's a 56-page issue. It has many very beautiful, moving, touching, interesting, powerful articles about mental health, which, you know, is on everybody's mind. It's every other article I read in the newspaper. Every time I do a workshop or a webinar, it's a huge thing on teachers' minds about, because, you know, it's been a really tough 3 years. Even without a pandemic, people are facing really challenging, sometimes traumatic issues or backgrounds, and they're trying to engage in learning while they're carrying around a heavy load. So just being thoughtful about mental health in the classroom can be really powerful. And it's students writing about how they, what's the subtitle? Learning, coping, and healing, right? So it's all student voices talking about this topic. So I opened up a PDF of this issue here, and I don't have time. I mean, there's nothing I would love more than to kind of scroll through this whole issue and show you, you know, all the pieces and like, you know, what they're like and just how powerful they are. And, but, you know, you have to do that in your own time. By the way, I noticed somebody in corrections is here. And this article just so happens is by an incarcerated person. His name is Tony Jones. And he talks about, you know, his mom dying while he's in prison and how hard that was for him. So we do get writings by incarcerated folks. It's great for you to bring the call for articles into the classroom in the prison. And if people want to write for the change agent, I almost in almost every issue I have prisoners writing for the magazine. We also have a whole issue on prisons. So there's also that. Okay, so lots of things. Okay, so but what I'm going to do is zip down to this little collection of articles that I made where I felt like, wow, there's a cool thing happening here. Each of these writers kind of had a strategy for their mental health. And, you know, here's one on, she writes about endorphins. And then this woman wrote about, you know, the power of a workout. And this woman, and for each one, I made a little yellow box where I kind of took the central idea where she says, you know, in this one, laughter is medicine, you know, and I looked for a source that could back up the claim. And I made it a hot link at the bottom. So part of the activity could be digging into these pieces and checking the science behind the claim, right? So she's claiming that her family and being able to laugh together helps her mental health. Is that like a scientific thing, or is that just an anecdotal thing for her? Let's go find out, right? This woman talks about the power of prayer and affirmation. That's a really important part of her mental health. Okay, I couldn't find anything specifically about prayer, but like I found something on meditation, right? So you could go and look at that source and, you know, see where that takes you. This guy talks about the stress of moving to a new country and how developing a routine made a difference. And so does routine help for mental health practice? You know, let's go find out. So you see what I'm saying? There's a bunch more, but I won't get into all of them. But what I do want to share with you now is just the endorphins piece, that first one, because I have that available in Google Slides. So if you don't mind, Hillary, could you put the link to that in the chat, to the endorphins? I'm just going to go straight to the Google slideshow and open this up. And check it out. I have it open on my screen. So yeah, I see a bunch of you are getting in there. That's great. So just take your time and maybe just page through the slides, check out the story, notice the images. Just take a minute to skim through. So if you've had a chance to just kind of quickly go through the story here, do you want to unmute and just tell me something that struck you about the story? If you were teaching this story, how would you maybe adapt these slides, or would you add any activities or anything like that?
I might have my students create a slide to add to it of what they do to produce endorphins.
Great.
And, if they've got a picture on their phone of them doing that activity or something, because there seemed to be an image attached with each of the things.
What a great idea. You're hitting, digital literacy then in that case. You're also hitting that mark about, remember in the college and career readiness standards, just to present in different ways, to collaborate using the internet, to use technology to present your ideas. Great. That's a wonderful idea.
It's a great way to show how, when we were talking about the thematic focus earlier, that they could see how this could be a jump start for them to be able to see what could they add to it and feel comfortable doing that.
Great. Yes, exactly. Notice the after you read activity that I created. It's just one activity. Partly I'm just limited by space, but you can add to these activities. The one I created was visit the source about endorphins in the box on slide 3, then do additional research and write your own essay about the benefits of exercise. So this is a great chance to visit a source, actually have it open. And I thought it was kind of cool because when you visit this source, look what it does. And so here's the article, What to Know About Endorphins. It's from this website, medicalnewstoday.com. And is that trustworthy? I don't know. That would be like your first question. What is this source? Then I noticed that the article itself uses a lot of sources, and it has this interesting thing where it puts a check mark depending on how trusted the source is. So this source comes from PubMed Central, a highly respected database from the National Institutes of Health. So that you're kind of getting people thinking about sources and what's trustworthy on the internet, a very important media literacy skill, critical thinking skill. And they can go check out the sources in the source, to find more information. And then also you're bringing up scientific language, like just talking about endorphins, using a science kind of word, talking about biology, talking about chemicals in the brain. One student might want to take it in that direction. Another student might want to take it in another direction. You just could generate lots and lots of directions here. So that would be a fun thing to explore and just think critically about.
I really like the last slide after your read thing where it talks about the author.
Yes. Thank you for mentioning that. I really want to point out something there. Well, first of all, why do you like it?
Well, what she says about math.
Yes.
And I was wondering too if that could lead to, what if you were to have your math students do some sort of exercise before they did a math assignment, see if it makes a difference,
Fantastic. Yes. I was so thrilled when she sent, so a couple things to notice. One is, see how we have her beautiful picture there? Isn't that great? I just think, I love that students just get to see pictures of other students as writers, and then her bio just talks about who she is. It's just really sweet and shows herself that she has a 14-year-old son and a cat that looks like a lion. I mean, she's trying to get her task diploma. Then she wants to become a nurse. And then she talks about this math, barrier for her. And we do have a special issue of the Change Agent on math. And there is an article in there about how one of the reasons we do math is to make ourselves better problem solvers, because we're solving problems with math, and there's an article like something like doing math makes you smarter or something. I can't remember the name of it, but again, it's all students talking about math in their life. So I love that issue touched her and helped get her over this obstacle to becoming a nurse, which involves a lot of math. So I just think the bios that we have for the students also do a lot of heavy lifting when it comes to engaging. It's not just the article, right? But the bio too, and the picture. So I'm really glad you noticed that. Thank you. What else about this piece? Oh, I know what I really wanted to show you is at the very top, the very first slide gives you instructions about this. So you have permission to adapt these slides for classroom use, okay? We don't want you to change the story. The story is her story, so don't change her words. But if you want to chunk it differently or do something, add different images, feel free. To make a copy of it, if you have a Google account, you just go up to File and you say make a copy of the entire presentation. Can everybody see that okay? If you don't have a Google account, I don't think you can do this. What you have to do is just download it into your software presentation, the presentation software that you use, okay? Now you literally own it. It's on your computer, it's on your hard drive. You can do what you want with it. So you can get really creative. You can add little quizzes, tests. You could put some more pre-reading activities, like more vocabulary work, just anything you want to do. And then you can make it shareable to your students. So
I think someone said it earlier about how this could work with vocabulary building with the students. Words in there like the natural remedy, Jennifer Lopez, Beyonce, Zuma. It has a variety: energized, encouraged. All those are words that they would have to be able to have an understanding of. If they didn't know who Jennifer Lopez was or who Beyonce was, it's an opportunity for them to be able to go out and want to learn, but who is this and why did they put this person in here?
Right. And you could play some music in your classroom and just lighten things up and help people feel like a sense of community. And I think more people feel seen, when you're showing something that's really close to them, but maybe not close to other people, then, they get to be seen a little bit differently, so there's just so many ways that this could be used. I noticed that somebody put in the chat, take your students outside for a walk and then see if they feel better and energized. Right? I mean, there's almost never a time when I'm exhausted, if I get up and do something, I usually feel better. So that's a great, it's a great lesson. And so then students could then write based on this one piece and based on going and looking at sources. Maybe they could interview people in the classroom. What do you do to feel energized? I love how in the article she talks about when she feels energized, it's had this ripple effect, and now she does more painting and she does more cooking. Like that's so wonderful. What is the ripple effect for you when you get yourself more energized? So that you could just use this one piece and branch out and do some writing. Or another option, and there's so many options. I mean, gosh, there's so many options. But another option that I want to share with you is this idea of using these three pieces from the Change Agent, all which talk about endorphins. So the first one is this one. This is what her story looks like on the page, a single PDF, a single page. So that's what it looks like there. The other thing about the Google Slides is it kind of breaks down the wall of text, right? These are not very high level. These are like grade level 5 and 6 equivalent. So it's not super hard, but it's still like a wall of text. In the Google Slides, it's broken down a little bit. And so and it's got the pictures to help communicate meaning. So you could move from that to this. And now this text is going to look a little bit more like a friend because, I read the story, saw those pictures, got scaffolded into this document. And now it doesn't seem so scary. Then there's this one, the power of a workout. She also talks about how when she does a workout, it boosts energy. This is somebody, she said she always hated any kind of working out. So that's a great starting place for a lot of us, right? Like, don't talk to me about working out. Like, I don't want to do, but that's her starting place. And then something shifted for her and she tells that story. And then this woman who talks about how laughter really helps, just being able to laugh and go on walk. And so how laughing also releases endorphins. So there's 3 articles in the Change Agent that mention endorphins. So you've got 3 sources right here that people could write off of. And I want to share a cool little thing I made for you, which is a graphic organizer that looks like this. It's a way to just take notes. And I'm suggesting that they could take notes on those 3 articles that are on pages 46, 47, 48. What they would need to do is they would need to write, just to practice this idea of using sources, write the article title and author, and then take notes. Remember, we talked about many different kinds of writing. Taking notes is harder than you think, because you don't want to just repeat the article. You want to take notes on the article. You don't want to cut and paste, or, you need to abbreviate some points and put them in the notes. So just the task, even if you never had them use these notes to do an essay or some more formal writing, even if all they did was take notes, but they took notes well, and they got your coaching, they read other people's notes. How did you take notes? Oh, you noticed that? I didn't know, even if that was the end of the activity, that would be huge, huge learning curve to be able to take notes well. So this is a graphic organizer that you could use. Again, you can make a copy of it and adapt it if you want to have different headings, if you want to do anything any differently. I was thinking that, I'm saying it's really important to cite sources, but I did not give any guidelines for how to cite sources. So maybe you would want to add that. I believe Hillary has put the link in the chat because I see people popping into the document, which is great. Notice what it says in red here. Teachers, delete this note after reading. Please make a copy of this document and then share that copy with your students. Give them editing rights so they can take notes in the document. Of course, they need to make their own copy, because if they don't, everyone's going to be taking notes on top of each other. Maybe you want that because maybe they're working in pairs or small groups, but you decide. The point is this document is viewable by anybody who has the link. However, it's not editable. Hard word to say, editable. So you would need to make a copy and then make it editable by your student. Okay. So I think graphic organizers are super duper ways to set your students up to learn so many skills. They have to read for evidence. They have to read for details. They have to take notes on those details. Then they have a great big massive notes. If you want to keep going with this activity, and you probably could you could probably have about a month of class time on this. You could then go, okay, next step is we're going to try to turn this into a piece of writing. Now you have to organize your notes. You have to think about what matters most about your notes. You have to think about what you want to say. What's your thesis? Do all that work. So we're just hitting lots of college and career readiness standards here for both reading and writing by doing this activity. How are we doing on time? We're doing pretty good. Okay, let me see. Any questions about any of this?
We have a comment from our director, Heidi Silver-Pecula, just emphasizing how confidence building it is when students feel well informed, they have a variety of perspectives, and how building confidence is, one of the best things about adult education and what we do.
Huge, huge. They're coming into our classrooms often feeling, not a big well of confidence. So anything we can do, to help build that, including, offering content that's written by peers. I think that that's a huge confidence builder. I hear so often, oh my God, if they can do it, I can do it, or,
Well,
you know.
I also think they're more likely to trust this source than they are other sources sometimes, because it's somebody who has experienced or is experiencing exactly what they're experiencing. We tend to trust sources of people we feel connected to. And so, we as teachers can provide them with resources and they'll look at it, but then when they see someone who's just like them connect to those sources and learn about it for themselves and say, hey, this is what I learned about this, and now I'm writing about it. I think it empowers them to say, I can take ownership of my learning as well.
That's exactly right. And also you get to see where you have expertise, right? And you are an expert on so many things, but you're not normally lifted up as that. Other people are experts. Other people know everything. I don't know anything, but actually letting students feel like, yeah, you know a lot. You've come a long way. You figured out so much, but it just doesn't have a light shined on it very often. So let's shine a light on that, and not in a fake way. This isn't like faker, this is real, what our students have figured out. And so the change agent, I just love that that's what I get to do, is showcase, amazing adult learners and everything that they've figured out. And even just that they figured out that they need to ask questions, certain kinds of questions, and they don't know the answers. That's okay too. But just, just putting forward the questions that they have. So I see that Joyce says the graphic organizer can help students visualize and construct ideas in an organized manner. Very effective tool for both teaching and learning. Yeah, thank you. And you know what? Everybody just make a copy of this thing right now, download it into Word, do whatever. Now you use this for use it in any way you want going forward into the future. Use it for non-change agent stuff. It's just a kind of a template, you can now mangle it and play with it and do whatever you want with it. The hardest thing a student does is walk into the classroom for the first time. Yeah. Thank you. It's really good for us to remember that, notice that, and honor, the courage that it takes to show up. Oh, Heidi says that Spotlight is the name of the adult learners. That's great. Love it. This is great, you all. Thank you so much for all your thoughts and your participation. It's just been great. Okay. Okay. I wanted to, okay, so I already did this. I showed you these other 3 articles, The Power of a Workout, and then My Family Makes a Difference. Do look at all of those other ones if you want in the mental health issue. And then we talked about this. Okay, so now, and I've touched on this already, but I just want to have it on one slide. You got all these notes. That could be your endpoint, like I said. That is a huge accomplishment, getting those notes down on a graphic organizer, on a Google Doc. Just so many skills have been used to get that to happen. But, you could also say, all right, let's go forward with this and make a more formal piece of writing. So now, students would need to filter through their notes. They're going to have to get rid of some of them, not use all of them. They're going to have to figure out what the priority is, where the thesis statement is, what's the main idea of what they want to try to say. They're going to have to try to organize it into an outline, figure out, if it's just one paragraph, figure out a topic sentence, or figure out a thesis if it's longer. Figure out how you want to cite your sources. There's a lot of different ways to do that. You have to figure it out. Write a rough draft, get feedback, redraft, make sure you cite your sources. Again, figure out, just the skill of listening to feedback is very important. Do you have to accept every bit of feedback you get? No, you don't. Do you have to have a good attitude about it? If you're the giver of feedback, can that feedback be constructive? A very important college and career readiness skill, right? When you're on the job, you're going to need to give and get feedback, and you're going to have to figure out how to accept it or not, or challenge it, but in a way that, is effective. So yes, if you want to move it on to that more formal writing, there are some steps for you. Okay. I'm trying not to do that thing where you start talking really fast at the very end of your webinar. But I really want you to meet Carlos. So he, as I said, he wrote for the Career Pathways issues, wonderful story about a whole lifetime working in concrete. I love the title, My Life in Concrete, because in the end, really, his life is so not in concrete. His life is flexible and amazingly non-rigid, and concrete is such a rigid substance. So I feel like there's this wonderful irony in the title. But he did his career working in concrete, and he wrote about it for the Change Agent. And then it just so happens that at this program, which is in Tucson, they did these digital stories, and I want to share his digital story. Now I'm thinking we might have to see a little bit of a Verbo ad, but here, let me try and see if you can hear it. Can y'all hear that? Okay. What if I skip ad?
Now, even if you don't have a writing job, you're going to have to write an email, a Slack message, or something along those lines. The main thing I do.
Here we are.
I used to think that my hands were only good for building for others. I worked hard for years until my body was no longer as good as my work. I never thought about education because growing up, it didn't play a role in my family. My work was all I knew. Then one day, my son needed help with his homework. Looking at his math homework was like looking at a foreign language. I knew that I could teach him to build anything and work with his hands, but I couldn't help him with fractions. I was doing side work for a friend that helped tutor my son. She finally told me one day that I needed to help him do his homework. That's when she asked me if I ever thought about going back to school to get my GED. I thought about it, and after a while she took me to get enrolled at Pima Community College Adult Education. I was scared because I thought I wasn't going to be able to learn anything. My family was very unsupportive, telling me I was too old and that you can't teach an old dog new tricks. That helped support my fear I had about going back to school. Sitting in math class was odd. I felt so lost and confused. I didn't understand the fractions that were on paper. I thought to myself, you do this work every time you do measurements. So I went out to my truck and got my tape measure. Man, how that made a difference in my schoolwork. I thought to myself, I could do this. There were times I wanted to give up, especially when my truck broke down. I didn't have a ride to school. I didn't know anyone that could give me a ride. I let Linda know that I would have to drop out of school. She told me that's not going to happen, that I had worked too hard to give up now. She would leave her house 2 hours early every day just to make sure I made it to school on time. And for the first time ever, I received an attendance award. Luckily, Linda was a great support and helped me keep my focus and motivation on my goals to earn my GED. After school, I would go home and my son and I would sit at the table doing homework. I was finally able to understand his homework, and he and I would solve fractions together using my tape measure. Going back to school has been such a wonderful experience. I've joined Student Leadership Council, where I found out I'm a great leader. I discovered that I have a voice and now can speak up for myself and for people of my generations. Thanks to Marianne and Shael, I am now an honorary member of AmeriCorps. I have had the privilege of attending my first conference, which was the National Coalition Leadership Conference at the U of A. And I got my very first name tag and received an award for the second time.
Sorry, I'm not sure what happened. Let's keep going.
And I are now having fun volunteering together at AmeriCorps functions. I feel like I am somebody now. I am making a difference, not only in my life, but in my son's. My AmeriCorps team and Pima Community College Adult Education has become my new family. Now these hands have a different purpose.
Right? That's what I'm talking about. Any thoughts about that? Would you show that video in your class maybe, or pair it with the story? I know you haven't read the article yet, but possibly pair it.
It's another really good math story.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a testimony for what we do and a lot the way we impact lives. That teacher going there 2 hours early to help them. I mean, hey,
Right.
he said it.
And not everybody could necessarily leave 2 hours early to pick up a student and get them to school, but every one of you and every teacher out there is doing the equivalent of that kind of thing. Just that extra mile all the time. Even if it's just the emotional work of being present for just a huge range of things, of people and issues and backgrounds that come into the classroom where you have to expand and, meet everybody where they're at. It's a huge effort. I also just really appreciate how he notices, he got a certificate and he got his first name badge, I mean, just the importance of kind of being made visible, when we have, this is not a webinar on student leadership or having student councils or anything like that, but, just when our students get noticed, and feel like they're part of a family and that they're visible, that's just really meaningful. Patricia says, I love that he did some problem solving for himself. Yeah. And, because I think he figured out, like I do math all the time, but nobody ever told him that. Like math to him looked like a workbook. Like, I can't do that. Oh, but you know what? I've been doing math your whole life. Here's how, so that was a great bridge that he built for himself from his own mastery to what he had to do to get his GED. So I just put my email address in the chat. Please, everybody, just copy that and make sure you can reach me. You'll also, as I said, you'll be getting a copy of the slides. So you'll have it there too. You'll have hot links to all the things that we've talked about today. Does anybody have any final questions? It's just about 2 o'clock. So, but I would love to stay and answer any questions if you have any, or just take any comments. And then also do put in the link to the evaluation, because I know that's always a good thing if you just do it sooner rather than later, because you're going to be quickly moving on to the next thing in the life. So if you have a chance to fill that out. So any last questions or comments? One thing I did not get to is talking about our call for articles. So we have a new call for articles, and I really would love to get submissions from Virginia. So the topic is resilience and student success skills. There's a whole series of writing prompts you can bring into the classroom to have your students write on the topic. And Hillary, the link is in the slides. Yeah, she just did it. She's always one step ahead of me. Yeah. There's the link to the call for articles. It's a Google Doc. Again, if it looks too long, you can make it your own and you can make it shorter, do whatever you want. But if you can bring those prompts in, I would really love to get some Virginia submissions. So. All right, Hillary, should we close out?
Yes, and thanks. Just thanks once again to all of y'all for coming, and thanks for Cynthia, and you've got her contact information and my contact information. We hope you guys will make use of the change agent, and we're always happy to learn about how you're doing so. If you have stories to share or questions, be in touch. Thanks so much.
Thank you, everybody.
This was wonderful. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.